Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about what will the warfare of the future look like, or even today, the warfare of today, today going forward. We've seen right across the Western world, there's been certainly a very intense commitment in all the Western powers to turn the military into not a tough guy, boots on the ground, rootin' tootin' dudes, but to encourage, pink-haired lesbians and pansy homosexuals and all sorts of people to enter the military, which seems to be counterintuitive. You want people who are going to defend the nation state and defend your people and defend your property and defend the borders or go into wars where you've got to get on the ground and shoot folks and this type of thing. Now, does it matter that there's going to be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of pink-haired lesbians in the in the military? Does that matter given the type of warfare of the future? Because if it's not boots on the ground, carry a heavy pack and charge down the enemy, if it's not going to be that sort of war, which it may not be, but if it's not, then shouldn't we sort of come to grips with the idea that a different sort of military, you're made up of different personnel with a different type of person is going to be fighting the next war, and then the next major war I'm talking about here. So no, I don't know. I'm not saying that is or isn't the case, and and if you're talking about an opposing army that's sort of in the border right next to you and can just walk down the road and excuse me, they're in your backyard, then you still need boots on the ground. But if you're coming to grips with an enemy that's across a lot of water or is a distance away, then is it a different sort of war that's needed, and that's not a boots on the ground war? So is it going to be a technology war primarily, where it isn't going to be people looking at each other in the eye and shooting, blasting away? So let's just have a look at that. Now, if you're an advanced Western society or an advanced technological society, then you're uniquely vulnerable to things like cyber warfare. So a successful cyber attack can take out a lot of your infrastructure, your electricity, for example, your internet won't work. A lot of the things that, your mobile phone won't work. A lot of the things that we take for granted today and without which we can barely function, a lot of those things will be gone. Look at the online ordering of things now. There's a lot of shops that don't exist anymore that once did. The sort of things you can buy in the shops are limited, but you can get it online. So imagine that the whole online and all the communications and again, water, electricity and so on was knocked out in a cyber attack, and all your attempts to get it back up and running were then knocked out again by a fresh or new cyber attack, or some sort of deadly computer virus is loaded, somehow gets into the system and takes out everything and won't let you fix it and bring it back up again, that sort of stuff. So that would be a crushing blow to an advanced Western society. But the less sophisticated and interconnected and technical society is, some of, for example, Afghanistan, you could, what are you going to knock out there? I mean, gee whiz, it's not a very sophisticated society, so you can knock out all this stuff and it doesn't really change anything. They're still living as goat herders and still living hand them out. It's a completely different society. They're not dependent on technology to anywhere near the extent. What are you going to do in places of Africa where you're going to send a robot to shoot up every mud hut in a village in the middle of nowhere? You can't find a centralized bit of technology or equipment or a major city in the sense that you can in the West, where just a few strikes of cyber warfare, whatever it is, can have a devastating effect on the society at large. You don't have that facility. We don't have that capacity to strike decisively in a low-tech society. It's only in the high-tech societies we can do that. And the West, the Germanys, the Britons, the Australias, the Americas, and so on. They're uniquely vulnerable to that sort of cyber attack, far more so than somewhere like Russia and China would be. So the relative risk reward of a successful cyber attack changes depending on the interconnected nature of the and the economic structure, of course, the organizational structure of society. The West is uniquely vulnerable to a successful cyber attack. Not that a successful cyber attack wouldn't hurt China or Russia or Iran or somewhere like that. They would, but not to the same extent. It would be crippling for an advanced Western society, but it would just be particularly inconvenient, annoying, and irksome to a much less technical society. And we need to understand that difference. For example, warfare on the ground requires, apart from the communications, requires a lot of satellite positioning stuff and various other technical gizmos and gadgets. And if you nuke and take out all the technical infrastructure, then you severely impair the ability of the troops any troops on the ground to be effective. Or even other things like drones and so on. How are you going to coordinate and manage them if your communications infrastructure has been nuked, taken out through a cyber attack, for example? So these are all factors to consider. Now, there's a heavy reliance on drones or robotics to as part of your military. Again, if your infrastructure is taken out, can those still be effective? And if so, to what extent can they be effective? Now, you can give troops on the ground instructions to, we'll do this, but the event communications cut off, you'll have to make local decisions along these lines, and then it'll give a much broader perspective of what. Then you can give humans, you can train them well and give them those sorts of things, and that may still be a troops on the ground gig. But again, you've still got to transport those troops, deliver them to the area where they're going to be effective. If you don't have a land bridge, and if you look at all the main supposed, likely or mooted enemies of the United States, as a case in point, the United States doesn't have a land bridge with any of those. So it's going to be remote warfare, which is going to rely heavily on technical infrastructure to implement or deliver. Let's just suppose then you've got, you successfully, for example, there's a successful cyber attack which knocks out the infrastructure. And a lot of the infrastructure is going to be knocked out of things like radar and early warning systems, that sort of stuff that's going to go along with it. And then you can deliver your robots and or your missiles or your drone strikes and things like that. Now, none of this requires boots on the ground. It means someone could be sitting in an armchair, hundreds of miles, thousands of miles away. And then does it matter if you've got a big muscled up dude, who would otherwise be the guy running in the front lines, carrying the 100-pound pack on his back with the rifle and shooting up the bad guys? Do you need someone like that when you're operating a drone remotely from an armchair thousands of miles away? Does it matter at that point whether it's a pink-haired lesbian or a green-haired lesbian, or the proverbial black lesbian, or what does it matter? It's a different sort of. They could be a skinny, dweeby, never seen a day of sunlight type person with delicate bones because they don't have enough calcium. that sort of person can still push the buttons on a hand controller to deliver a drone strike or deliver a missile or to launch a cyber attack. So the type of people that may fight the war, assuming it's going to be remote and armchair, may be very different. Now, whether or not they should be homosexual with pink fingernails or green-haired lesbians or something, that probably can be debated. But will it need to be a boots on the ground tough guy? Probably not. You don't need, that's not the skill set you need at this point. Again, I'm assuming no land bridge here where troops on the ground can be delivered down the highway around the corner and that sort of thing. So if we're looking at remote warfare, then the cyber soldiers will be different. I think you'll still need both. But if you can knock out your enemies through cyber warfare, if you knock out your enemy's infrastructure, and then you can deliver substantial drone strikes to whatever may have survived. And again, the enemy will need to have some sort of technical sophistication. It isn't going to work if you do it to villages in the middle of fucking nowhere in Afghanistan. That isn't going to work. That won't be decisive in any sense, particularly when you're fighting not so much military but ideology at the same time as you are with devout and pious Islamic State in the case of Afghanistan. But if you can knock out, or through cyber warfare, you knock out all the things, then go with drone strikes, then deliver missiles, and drop sort of clusters of robots around to shoot up the various towns, that sort of thing, then you'd probably have a fairly quick decision in terms of the enemy deciding that, oh, this is all getting a bit much. I think I'll roll up the white flag and call it a day. But can you get a decision, or can you get a decisive outcome like that? What sort of deployments would go on? How many robots would you need? How many drones do you need? Can they all be mobilized? Where will they be mobilized from? Now, you're still going to need sort of, the frontline tough guys, but how many exactly? Now, given the all across the West, there's been this maniacal desire to reduce the effect of the on the ground, boots on the ground, tough guy effectiveness of all the war, whether it be a flying aircraft or in the Navy or just a plain infantry, boots on the ground. There's been a very concerted, coordinated attempt to reduce the effectiveness of the fighting force. So I don't know where. I mean, these people are incompetent and stupid, and there's a whole lot of things. But it is very coordinated, and they've put a lot of time and effort into doing this. And I've seen some of the adverts for the American military where they're talking about lesbian social justice warriors that are going to join the army. Fuck, is that insanity or what? But anyway, again, whether they're a social justice warrior or a lesbian or not, they can still sit in an armchair and push the buttons to control the drone. Or to upload the cyber warfare virus. So you don't need the tough guys to do that. I'm wondering whether the Western military is being refashioned not to fight international enemies, but to actually be deployed in civil war conditions where they're against their own population. I think they'll be directed against the white people, because the white people are last holdout to the globalization project. So it's them that in particular are in the globalists hate the most and want to marginalize the most, and therefore will want to use the military forces against the white people. I think that's probably a useful thing, but or a consideration to keep in mind. The last thing I'll say is that the globalists want international borders only amongst the richest countries, by the way. They want international borders to be removed so they can continue with their mass relocation of black and brown peasants into the West. So the idea of you need an army to protect your borders and protect your civilization or protect your society, that's fading away now, at least on the basis of the globalists. That's fading away. They all talk tough about protecting the borders of Ukraine or Israel, but protecting the borders of Ukraine is because Vladimir Putin and Russia are not going along with the globalist project. This is enraging the globalists. So they're trying to weaken, destroy, undermine, call it what you like, Russia, as punishment for Putin not going along with the globalist project. Got nothing to fucking do with territorial integrity of Ukraine. That's bullshit. It's just they want to punish Putin for not going along with the globalist project, in the same way that they're punishing Trump for not going along with the globalist project. It's part of that same wider globalist scheme. Similarly, the Arabic countries, because of the Islamic faith thing, are also seen as useful or not being useful to the globalist project. So they have to be punished for that. And Israel is, if you like, the beacon of the globalization project in some ways, particularly financial, in the Middle East there. So they have to be protected, and those against them have to be punished because they're not going along with the globalist project. Again, it's very much pro and anti-globalist. It's still it's the globalist conflict that's playing out in the Middle East. So I see that as just an extension again of the globalist conflict in looking at a wider angle view. So how will war be fought in the future? I think it is migrating to a technical war. It may be who gets the first cyber warfare successful strike in will prevail, but it will be a different sort of a war, and particularly again where there's no land bridge and it's remote. So my view is that it probably doesn't matter to some extent. It probably doesn't matter that there's again pink-haired lesbians or whatever that are coming to the military, because sitting in an armchair pushing buttons for a drone is not the same as the tough guy boots on the ground gig. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.